Everyone, how you doing today? My name's Kirsty, aka Beth Bookish, and this is my June reading wrap-up / life vlog update kind of stuff. So let's go talk about some books, let's go talk about my life, and let's just go talk. Starting off relatively strong-ish with finishing a book and making some progress on a book. So I am working on a vlog project at the moment where I am reading some of my friends' all-time favourite books to sort of measure how compatible we are from a reading standpoint, because obviously from a friendship standpoint we're very compatible, but with reading maybe we won't be so much. So I'm currently in the process of reading the first friends list, and I started the audiobook of Where Dreams Descend in May. So for the start of June and for the amazing Readathon, I got that finished for the first leg, because the first leg was to read a book you didn't purchase to go to Toronto. And that's what I did. I finished that ebook. I'm not going to talk too much because obviously this is for a vlog, so you'll see more about my thoughts in that vlog. I did give it a 3.5 stars. However, it is so close to 4 stars. It's almost like it's just sort of 0.0 something below 4 stars. So it was a very high 3-star. I will give it that I loved the atmosphere and the building of the tension between the characters was fantastic. The dialogue was good. Unfortunately for my personal tastes, there were just a few other things that I didn't enjoy. World building felt very kind of non-existent and it needed more. And a lot was left unexplained. I've also looked up for the sequel because I was like, maybe I'll really enjoy the sequel. Nothing about it appeals, and the fact that the sequel has a lower rating on average than the first book really doesn't bode well. I don't think I've ever seen that. And a lot of the reviews were saying that it's not as good and it lost a lot of what made the first book good. So it's not one I'm going to continue the series of. But I did give it 3.5, nearly 4 star. And there were a lot of things that were good. I will also say I didn't enjoy the audiobook, but like I said, if you want more information and more details on why I didn't like it, please go check out the vlog that should be up. It better be up by the time this vlog goes up, because I will probably just cry if it's not. And then for life updates, we do have a huge one, and that is I'm going to Australia. It's official. We've talked about it, and I've mentioned on the channel that we were in the process of planning it and hoping that it was going to happen. I sent off for my passport early May. Early May I sent off my passport. That came back on the 1st of June. That arrived. I submitted my application for my visa on the 1st of June, and the email granting me the visa turned up so fast it actually arrived before the confirmation email saying we've received your application. So that was really funny for to realise, and even Ren was like, holy crap, you know. So then yesterday, which was the 3rd, we got on a video call, we sorted out the flights, we made sure all the timings were good. So I leave England at 2 p.m. on the 4th of November. I arrive in Australia at 8:50 p.m. on the 5th of November. And then I am staying for all of November, all of December, and pretty much all of January, because I return on the 30th of January. My flight leaves Australia and I return into England on the 31st at 10 in the morning, 11 in the morning. The big emotions came out yesterday, and I'm still kind of suffering a little bit from it today. Yesterday was obviously the excitement and the, oh my God, it's happening. And then after a couple of hours, it was, well, not even a couple of hours, after about 20 minutes, it was, oh my God, it's happening. All of those thoughts started to swirl. I had quite a bad anxiety attack throughout the day that devolved into a full-blown panic attack, because anxiety attacks I'm okay with, but when I go into a panic attack, I can't cope, which led to some physical body reactions that happen every time I have a panic attack. And I'm still suffering a little bit today. My stomach is still very dodgy. I still feel very shaky. My breathing isn't quite what it should be. And I triggered a migraine and didn't fall asleep properly until 4 o'clock this morning. So my body does not react well to any form of adrenaline, whether it be good or bad. And as it showed yesterday, I got excited, I got overexcited. That then backfired, turned into a panic attack, which then turned into migraine, sickness, uncontrollable shaking, and yeah. So needless to say, before I fly anywhere, I will be going to the doctor about a month before I leave to be like, right, I need a medication that's going to keep me calm. Because I can't be in that state of shaking, vomiting and all of that while on a plane in the middle of the air. I just can't do it. Very, very excited. And now I'm like, oh my God, we can actually start to plan things and we can book trips and we can start looking at where we want to go and visit. But there is also a lot of anxiety. But I'm trying to not let that overwhelm me too much. But I am going to do a full vlog with all of the sort of preparation stuff, all of this going into way more detail soon. Part 1 will come out at some point in June, July. But yeah, anyway, I have rambled for way too long. So I'm going to go and I will speak to you all on the next update. 2 more finished books and a little The Amazing Readathon update. So, something I'm really not liking about The Amazing Readathon is the fact that we get a prompt, we only get 3 days to complete that prompt for that leg, for the count, for like the bonus points. We can still submit previous legs. It's just, I feel like I want to support my team during the leg. I don't want to constantly be playing catch up, and I feel like 10 prompts is just too much. And it's just putting on pressure on my reading that I don't like. Similarly with Bookemon, when I first started looking into that, it was just so overwhelming. But with Bookemon, we've got the whole year. This one, I am genuinely like, oh my God. So I've just gotten to the point now where I'm reading what I want to read. And then as they drop the prompts, I'm hoping that maybe whatever I've already got in progress is going to be fitting for one of the prompts, so I can like already be ahead. And thankfully that has worked for the current leg. We are now on leg 4, which is Paris. And the prompt is to read a prize winner. And thankfully, The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman, I started 2 days ago. Where are you going, Bennett? My character just started running off the screen. Thankfully, I started The Graveyard Book a couple of days ago. And it's a very quick and easy read, so I will have this done in time. But oh my God. But anyway, those are not the 2 books. So I'm enjoying the fact that it's kind of challenging me to actually read every day, but I'm not liking the fact that I just constantly feel like I'm behind and rushing to catch up, and there's just so much going on. I'm a little bit overwhelmed, and I wish that instead of being 10 prompts and it being every 3 days, if it could be like 8 prompts and every 5 days or something, that would just make my life so much easier. Anyway, the 2 books that I have completed though. First up, we have A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. Still 5 stars. Absolutely love it. I'm not going to talk much about it here because obviously I'm doing a rereading of my favourites vlog for my 5-year anniversary that's coming up towards the end of July. So obviously I'm not going to talk a lot, but 5 stars. Lila is still one of my favourite characters. I really liked Rye a lot more this time. And Holland, the Tortured Boy department is still going strong. So, loving that. And then I had another 5-star. I've literally gone from a month ago really, really struggling to get 5 stars and starting to feel really upset about my reading to in the past month, I've had so many. I've almost filled my 5-star Hall of Fame in my reading journal, and I'm now like, shit, I've still got half the year to go and I've almost run out of space. And I'm like, uh-oh. But it also shows that it's amazing, and I'm thinking maybe I won't include rereads or manga in the 5-star Hall of Fame, just focus on new novels. We shall see how it goes. We shall see how it goes. But my second 5-star, that again, not talking about a lot here, you will have to check out the Bookish Compatibility, Are We Bookishly Compatible vlog, but role-playing by Kathy Yardley. I read this as one of Chelsea's favourites, and it is now also one of my favourites. I just love all the rep in there. I love the dynamics. I loved the nerd culture. I loved everything about this book. I gave it 5 stars, but like I said, if you want a full breakdown of my review and what I loved the most about it, go check out my Are We Bookishly Compatible video that I did where I read Chelsea's favourite books, and you'll find out there. But yeah, 2 done. Yee! Another one finished, and I'm quite happy with my progress this month. Obviously, I'm still stressed about keeping up with the prompts for the Amazing Readathon. I actually finally finished. This was the first prompt that I actually finished in the 3-day time frame, because up until now it's taken me sort of 4 or 5 days, so I'm constantly playing catch up. But The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman I was able to read in about a day and a half. Very quick, very easy read. Neil Gaiman is an author who I want to love everything he does, and the idea of his writing, kind of like with Terry Pratchett, the idea of his books always grabs me, but I really actually struggle with the writing style, and this one was no different. Obviously, I was aware this is a middle grade, so it's not going to be as in-depth and detailed and as explained and deep as an adult or a YA would be. However, one element in particular in this book really felt rushed, under-explained, and I'm still not entirely sure what the purpose was or why, and it was so vaguely explained. And that was the concept of the man Jack and the Jack of all trades. That part in particular, and there's one bit with Silas and Miss Lepescu where they disappear and we get a tiny bit with them, but it's just so rushed and so hurried. It was like, what? So I feel like this either should have been a duology or a slightly bigger book, just to give a little bit more insight into those, and also to sort of, because if I was confused as a fully grown adult, I can imagine children would be confused reading this. But everything else I really loved. The atmosphere building was great, especially like the Sleen and everything that happened within that storyline. I really loved. I was getting chills at one point, and then towards the end there was a particular character that something happened to, and I was like, oh, and it really was so well written and I really liked it. So I really liked the atmosphere. I loved all the cast of characters and the things. It did feel natural. I liked the ways that Bod grows up in the graveyard and the things that he can do as a result of that. I liked that there was kind of the element of magic and mystery without it being super magical. So it felt more like magical realism than it did actual magic and fantasy. I loved the cast of all the ghosts and all the variety of the ghosts and how they live in the graveyard. I now really want to go to my local graveyard and try and find the gallstone just because I want to see if there is a grave like that. So maybe I will take myself on a walk at some point. When I do, I've got to do a walk for a book that I'm reading for Read It or Reap. So I'm wondering if I should take the graveyard route and try and find... And it's made me remember that I used to love going to the graveyard when I was younger and try and find like the oldest grave, the most unique name, things like that. So maybe a trip to the cemetery is in order, and there is literally one at the back. If I stand on my chair, I can see it from my house. So, there is one very, very nearby that I can take a walk through. But yeah, I did really enjoy the range of characters, how we had like a Roman soldier up to sort of like people who had only been dead a couple of years or a few years. And yeah, it was interesting because they also discussed how, as Bod was growing up, the ghosts of children that when he was a child were the same age as him were now a lot younger than him, and how the dynamics kept changing. And also his interactions with the real world. I did have a bit of an issue with the ending because they were talking about being grown up and that being fully grown and being like able to be independent and live on your own. And at the end of the book, he was only 15. And I was a bit like, okay, sure, let's just send a 15-year-old off into the world after having grown up in a graveyard. I would have liked just a little bit more with that, and I felt the ending, certainly the last like 3 chapters, just was so rushed and could have done with a lot more. But like I said, I do understand it's a middle grade. I understand it's not going to be that deep, but again, it just reinforces that middle grades are not my favourite. So I don't know. I've heard that there is still one book by Neil Gaiman that I am very interested in, which is Nevermore, something like that. But again, I don't know if that's a middle grade. But anyway, that is that one. I've given it 3.5 stars. So by no means did I not enjoy it. It was just, it needed way more substance and explanation. I really feel it could have done with being a bit bigger or a duology. But with that done, because I did finish it in the time frame, I took the plane across to Paris for that leg, which meant I got double points, which is awesome because I didn't get any extra bonuses on this one. And I now have my book for the next leg, so the current leg for the 12th, 13th, 14th. We've just had it announced and I did a poll pick and I got Starling House by Alex E. Harrow, so that is my next read. But yeah, I should have more updates soon because I am currently reading a couple more books, and I've got one book that I'm a quarter through, one book I'm halfway through, and one that I'm about to start. So you will be getting more updates soon. Okay, I'm talking reasonably quietly because it's 1 a.m. You can tell by the bags under my eyes. I just finished Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. This was a 5-star. It was a 10-star. Until the last 4 or 5 chapters, I was so immersed in the atmosphere and the building of this and the sort of subtle threats that were coming into Opal and learning all these different things, and it was so well done. It had that really gothic-y atmosphere. It had that kind of... I never went into this thinking it was a haunted house, but I knew it was going to be a sentient house. And I was more expecting sentience, and the house was my favourite character. and the Hellcat. I loved the different building up of the characters. I loved all their introductions. At first, I didn't like Opal's brother. I felt he was very, on one hand, very mature, on the other hand, very immature. But then again, he was only 16. But then towards the end, I started to like him and appreciate that it wasn't that he didn't appreciate her efforts. It was just that you could tell he felt guilt that she had given up basically her childhood, and like she forged documents to make her 2 years older, so she technically took charge of him when she was like 15 or 16, and she managed to get false documents to say she was 18 so that she got custody. And I think there's an element there that he doesn't want to feel a burden to her, and he feels guilty that he took a lot of her childhood and all of that kind of thing. So there were so many layers to this book, but the one thing I really, really hated was towards the end, it just kind of, the pace dropped so much. It felt like a different book, and I felt like I was suddenly getting, I know we were getting like the truth and the actual realities, but because we'd already heard 2 or 3 different versions of it, by the time we got to the final version, I was bored. And it took way longer than expected, and just the atmosphere of the book dropped, and the ending was just nowhere near the standard of the rest of the book. I'm also super pissed that there is a second epilogue, but only in the Barnes & Noble special edition, which if you are in the UK, you are screwed because we cannot get Barnes & Noble and nowhere online is it available. So I'm kind of like, if you're gonna do, I know it's a special edition, but if you're going to do something like that, you should do it so that it's accessible for everyone, because I now really want to see that epilogue. But yes, the atmosphere, the house, the way that the wardens were chosen, and just the way everything was interweaved in the story and that side of the story. I liked the romance. It was clean. There wasn't like explicit, and it felt like a gentle, natural build between the characters. I liked that the book wasn't set over a really tiny time period. It was set over like 3 or 4 months, so we really got to see that building with the characters, and it felt realistic that after 3-4 months they could be falling for each other. I didn't like the fact that we were reminded a lot that he is ugly. It was like the more romantic they got, the more it was emphasized how he wasn't very attractive. We didn't really need that reinforcement. I did love the writing. As you know, with 10,000 Doors of January, I found the writing to be a bit too flowery and a bit too whimsical. Whereas in this, the flowery, metaphorical, that lyrical writing worked so well with weaving that spooky, creepy atmosphere, and I did love it. I really loved the sort of the antagonist in this, because it wasn't like in your face blunt. It was just the way she was sort of hinting at the threats, and the way that she dropped information that Opal was like, how do you know any of this? And that was sort of, it felt more dangerous. It felt like an actual threat, and it felt like someone who could follow through. I have given it, I wanted to give it 5 stars. I really wanted to give it 5 stars. Unfortunately, because of how bad the ending dropped off for me personally, and felt a little bit rushed, and it felt both really slow and really rushed. I'm still going to give it 4.5, but I just feel like because of that drop in the pace and how the story changed in a way I really didn't expect, I can't quite give it that full 5 stars, but it is definitely 4.5, and I'm so glad I read it. And that's now 2 out of 3 of her books that I've really enjoyed and given either like a 4.5 or a 5. So I think she has cemented herself as a favourite. But anyway, I'm gonna go. I definitely now want to read more books that have got, I'm definitely coming into my dark gothic-y sort of atmospheric horror. You know, it's not gory, it's not freaking me out, so I don't want to sleep with the lights off, but it's giving me enough of a tingle, and it's making me go, when it's giving me that dark, spooky atmosphere. So yeah, 4.5, another one done. And I am now in Cape Town in the Amazing Readathon, so I can now focus for the rest of this weekend. I'm just going to focus on trying to do some sightseeing. See you on the next one. I listened to Wayward Children as a part of the Amazing Readathon's face-off weekend. I was like, I really want to read something. So this is Every Heart a Doorway by Shona Maguire. Not Wayward Children, that's the series. Basically, I read it because I suddenly remembered that Spotify has its own audiobook service. You can listen to up to 15 hours a month, and it was a really short, snappy one. It was only like 5 hours, which meant with the speed I read at, it took about just under 4 hours. It was also a book that I read for my Are We Bookishly Compatible with Chelsea Zhao, and I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. So yes, please do go check out that vlog. I've already mentioned it once here in this wrap up, but do go check out that vlog and see my full thoughts. But I will say is I thought it was a very interesting concept. I loved the idea of this being a home that was for those who have been to these worlds, come back, and the fact there's two places they could have gone. They could have ended up at that school, which is for the people who want to remember or even want to go back. And then there's another school where it's for people who want to forget and move on with their lives. And I just really liked the whole setup. I thought the writing was really well done. It was a really good atmosphere. Descriptions were great. I have seen that this is supposedly sort of like a 12 and up, but I do disagree with that age rating, because the descriptions of like the body horror of the victims in this kind, because it is a bit of a murder mystery, and the descriptions of what happened to them, I was like, I wouldn't really be comfortable with anyone under about 15 reading this. So, you know. Anyway, like I said, go check out the vlog for the full breakdown, but I did give this one 5.5 stars, and I'm really excited to continue my reading and on to the next, so let's go. So yesterday I finished the Dragonbound. This is by Thea Harrison. It's book 1 in the Elder Races series. I'm not going to talk too much about this one though, because it's one of the books in Read It or Reap. And so if you want to know all my thoughts, please go check out that vlog when it comes out. Should be out by now, but just in case it's not, when it comes out, please go check that out. But essentially this one is one of those kind of like shifter paranormal romances, and it's a world that's got different kinds of Weir and Fae and things like that. And this woman who is half Weir and half human gets involved with the most dangerous of all the Weir, the dragon Dragos, which the name alone is like, seriously. But I read it, I gave it 3.5 stars. It wasn't as enjoyable as I remember it being when I was younger, but I think that's because I've read a lot of these kind of books now, and I know what I like and what I don't, and I didn't like a lot of the writing stuff in here. But I did like the world building, and I liked the different things that were in there, so it was a mixed book, 3.5, and I did have a good time, but I won't be continuing it. And for the Amazing Readathon, this was the Madagascar prompt, where it was a book with religion. And even though it's only one tiny little mention in the first chapter, it did state that Dragos used to be celebrated as a god. And also one of the characters is a thunderbird from Native American mythology. And so it was determined, I checked, and certainly in the sample chapter at the end, it was talking about how he is revered as a god. So I was like, screw it, I'm counting that. I also have a cold and I'm not feeling great, so I'm gonna go. But I did finish that, and that was awesome. So that's another one done this month. So go check out that vlog for the full thoughts and breakdown. And yeah. I'm not yet finished, but I'm reading The Co-op by Tara DeWitt, and she is definitely going to become a new favourite author. And honestly, the character in here, I apologise, you'll hear the air conditioning, it's loud. One of the characters in here, I relate so hard to her. She's saying about how she knows that she's very difficult, and that one of her biggest doubts is, she says here, I already don't know what I bring to this friendship, why she sticks by my side. Because when I'm not easy for people, when I'm not a convenient version of me, I always manage to lose them. And oh, did that hit me in the feels, because this book's gonna get me. I'm starting to realise I desperately need a better camera. But we have another book done for the Amazing Readathon, and obviously in June. I have genuinely lost track of how many books I've read this month. I'm not even kidding, I have lost track. But The Co-op by Tara DeWitt, she is definitely on her way to becoming a favourite author for me, because this is 2 books that I've read by her in 2 months, and both have been 4.5 stars. This one was so close to a 5-star, but it did have a couple of flaws that it needed to talk about. The first thing is the female lead in this. I understood where she came from, don't get me wrong, but to basically have based your entire personality around what happened one summer when you were 18 and the way she treats him for, I would say, a good 70% of this book, she is just he just has to breathe, and she is ready to jump down his throat and throw really horrible things in his direction. And I'm going to say this because to me, I feel like I wanted to know it going into this book, and it doesn't really affect the whole plot as a whole, but she does something when in the first sort of couple of weeks of them living together, he pisses her off. She uses his toothbrush in the toilet, like to, does the whole toothbrush in the toilet thing. She then feels guilty and she's like, oh, I triple clean the toothbrush. But the thing gets referred to 4 or 5 times throughout the book where she's like, oh, I wish I had done it now, and I wish I hadn't cleaned his toothbrush. And then towards the end of the book, suddenly she's buying him a new toothbrush, and he's like, oh, why? And she uses this fake. And I'm like, the fact that a 26, 27-year-old woman would even consider doing that is just the peak of childishness to me and immaturity. That just to me goes beyond a line that's irredeemable. And I just, and it was like, if you feel so guilty about doing this thing, you should have thrown that brush away and bought a new toothbrush that day and been like, I'm really sorry, I was cleaning and it dropped into the toilet. Or, made an excuse. So yeah, I really did not like her behaviour for a lot of this book. He wasn't a saint. He did a few points, quite rightly, in my opinion. He fired back. And there was one point he said something that even I kind of went, I know she's been pushing you. I know she's been a bitch. But that went a bit far and you shouldn't have really said that. But I do feel like once they finally started to work together and got on board with each other, it was incredible and I loved it. And there were a lot of moments. By the end of the book, I was crying. Not going to lie, a lot of that is very hormone driven because it's, around that time where my hormones are ramped up to the maximum and I don't really have much control over them, so I'm more likely to cry at things anyway. But it was talking about the grandmother, and like the whole premise of this book is that both of their grandmothers have died and they left them the house in the will, and the house needs a lot of work, so in order to do the work they get married, because she has a trust fund that has all of the money in that they would need to get this place back up to code, get it renovated and ready to sell for a shit ton of money. As soon as the house is remodeled and sold, they will each take half of the money. She's going to disappear off and go do her own thing. He's going to stay and own his own contracting business, and they're going to divorce. That's the agreement. But yeah, apart from that thing with the toothbrush, it really kind of stuck hard with me. I was just like, I do not understand why she chose to do that and why it had to keep coming up. Like, just have that one incident, have her feel guilty, replace the toothbrush, and never mention it again. It really irked me that it kept coming back. But I did really, really love the side characters in this. I loved Sal. She was great. As I said, there was one moment that had me absolutely bawling because it was talking about the grandmother and scattering her ashes, and it was the first time Lorraine finally let herself grieve over that. It was really, really well written. I definitely love the way that Tara DeWitt writes romances. I like how she brings in these internal things and these like extra layers to characters. I just feel there's something sometimes with her writing where it just goes a little bit too sort of sloppy, and that's what stopped me both times so far from 5 stars. But this one I am giving a 4 star. And like I said, that's now like book 8 or 9 for this month. I also have some very quick book mail that I want to show you because it is so pretty. I haven't even read this yet. I saw it everywhere when it came out, and I thought it was going to be a book. It should have been a book that was immediately on my radar and immediately made me go, yes, I want to read this. But it wasn't until like 2 weeks ago that I was like, well, not even 2 weeks, like a week ago that I was like, this book needs to be on my TBR because it's got that kind of dark gothic atmosphere. It involves death, and I think because it was sort of described to me as a dark fantasy romance, I was a bit like and the word romantasy, as soon as I hear that, or the combo of romance and fantasy, I just immediately switch off. But in the past 3 months I've read 2 books that have got that kind of gothicy, darker, poisony, planty feel to it, or like, dark secrets and family secrets and houses. So we had Starling House by Erin Morgenstern and This Poison Heart by Kaylin Bayron. So I picked up the, is it the something Vault? Hodderscape? Yeah, Hodderscape Vault edition of Belladonna from Waterstones. Look how stunning this is. Like the colours, the cover. It has, under the dust jacket, we have this beautiful foiling that is just absolutely gorgeous. And then we have an author's note and it's signed by the author. And it's made me really, really excited. So yeah, that's my reading update. I've got a feeling that there's only going to be one more book now because, well, we're on like 9 of 10 for the Amazing Readathon, and for that I'm reading Days at the Morisaki Bookshop because even though it's not going to get me as many points, I just want to get the prompt done, and that is to read a book with a source of light on the cover and it has some string lights on it. So I'm going to have water on the cover, and it has snow, which is water. So I'm reading that, and then we'll just see what the final book is. So there's a maximum of 2 more books for this month. So it could be on for my best month in terms of quantity of reading. We shall see about quality. Anyway, this is going on for way too long, so I'm going to go and I'll see you on the next update. Today's book technically was yesterday, so I could say that I finished 2 books yesterday, which I'm really, really proud of and happy about. But technically, I also did actually finish this one today. So as you know, yesterday I did the co-op. That was June 27th. And then when I went to bed, it was a bit late. It was like 1:30 in the morning. I'm having a bit of trouble with my insomnia again, thanks to the recent weather and things like that, and my bedroom consistently being above 26 degrees during the night. I was like, I am going to just read a few pages. I was like 5 pages in, I think, when I started reading last night. Planned on reading a few pages, and an hour and a half later I was finished. And that is Days at the Morisaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagisawa. I haven't yet run it through Core. It's not a 5-star, but it's definitely somewhere between the 4 and 4.5, possibly even like a 4.75 if I did those kind of ratings. I really did love this. Certainly, I have tabbed I've tabbed some quotes. Most of them are about books and reading that I felt hit really hard for me as a reader. But there was like another one about sort of mental health in general, and I liked the fact that this was a book that tackled mental health in a really positive way. I just found it really beautifully written. There were a couple of things where I just felt I would have liked more detail in and more from those interactions, certainly where she met someone later on in the book. It was very sweet and very cute, but I also kind of feel like I wanted a little bit more. And certain revelations were done very sort of quickly. But I feel like that's a part of the whole thing with the story, is that it's more about giving you an atmosphere and a feeling than an actual sort of a romance or whatever, or a life plot. I felt it was definitely more about sort of giving people, kind of like with the Monk and Robot series, where they're short books and you don't get a lot of sort of stuff going on, but you do get this really beautiful vibe with lovely quotes, and it makes you kind of think about your life and reflect on things. And I feel like this one gave me that kind of feel. But this was definitely beautiful. One of my favourite quotes was, right, at the start of the book, the main character, Takako, is not a reader. She admits that she doesn't enjoy reading. She's never really seen the purpose in her uncle owning this bookstore. But her uncle later on in the book reveals that he knew that she would eventually love it. And she did. Like, she had nothing else to do one night, so she picks up a book. Oh, this is the one where it's like, it's important to stand still sometimes. Think of it as a little rest in the journey of your life. This is your harbour, and your boat is just dropping anchor here for a little while. And after you're well rested, you can set sail again. Just, that almost had me tearing up. Yeah, this one. So it was like, I read slowly, savouring each book one by one. I had all the time in the world then, and there was no danger I'd run out of books no matter how much I read. I read them voraciously, the authors whose names I knew but hadn't read, the ones whose names I'd never even heard of, any book that seemed interesting, and yet for all I read, I found book after book that I still wanted to read. I'd never experienced anything like this before. It made me feel like I'd been wasting my life until this moment. How many of us book readers feel that way? It was just so, I loved it so much. It was so pretty. And there was also discussion about mental health and pregnancy, miscarriage, and dealing with the aftermath of that grief. There was a bit of spousal abandonment and other sort of things that come up. But it wasn't done in a really hard, in-your-face way. It was approached very gently, and it was written very respectfully, which I appreciated. And then there was like one final sort of bookish quote that I loved, and it was like, as she was reading one of the secondhand books, it had like a quote from one of the books that she was reading, and then it says, at some point in the past, someone reading this book had felt moved to take a pen and draw a line under these words. It made me happy to think that because I had been moved by that same passage too, I was now connected to that stranger. Another time I happened to find a pressed flower someone had left as a bookmark. As I inhaled the scent of the long ago faded flower, I wondered about the person who had put it there. Who was she? When did she live? What was she feeling? It's only in second-hand books that you can savour encounters like this, connections that transcend time. Just, if you are a bookish lover, you will love this book. It was so cute. I loved it. Anyway, on to the next. My next, and probably, no, it won't be the final because I've got one more audiobook to do. Today's the 30th. It's the last day of the Amazing Readathon. The final city was announced yesterday, and we only have until today to get it done. And the book that I was hoping to have read for it, that I finished yesterday, ended up not going ahead because the prompt is a book that's been adapted or has even been greenlit for adaptation. And I read More Days at the Morisaki Bookshop. Even though technically this one hasn't, the first one has, and in the spirit of the Readathon, it said that, you know, if the first one in the series or any of them in the series have been adapted, then the rest won't count. So I was like, great. So I've got something else. I've got a 4-hour audiobook instead. I'm going to do the second book in The Wayward Children, so you'll hear that in a bit. But first, More Days at the Morisaki Bookshop. This one I didn't rate as highly as the first one. I still really enjoyed it. I've still given it 4 stars, but where the other one was 4.75, very, very close to a 5-star, this one got quite a low 4 and was almost a 3.5. It's not that it was bad, it was just, I felt the translation and the actual story was a lot more. There were definitely more times in this where I paused and was like, is that the right word? Was that the right phrasing? It felt very confusing sometimes. And what I will say is, if you want to read this duology, the first book is more about books and reading and rediscovering a passion for reading, as well as like the stuff that's going on in the lives of the people in the shop. The second book is very much more about the actual people of the bookshop, the family that runs it. So if you're hoping for a book about books, read the first one. If you want one that's got more about personal lives and dealing with grief and loss, read the second book, because the second book does deal with like the pain of losing someone to terminal cancer. So please do be aware of that if that's something that you like to avoid. It does deal with a lot of grief. There's a lot of stuff there that made me smile, but it was definitely more about pain and loss and grief. It did have a nice ending. I was tearing up at the end, so I couldn't rate it too low, because if a book makes me cry, normally it's a 5-star or very near it. But like I said, it just wasn't as much about the books and reading, and I didn't quite get the same. The first book I got cozy, wholesome vibes. This book I got more of a like sad, knowing what was coming, and just felt the whole book waiting for the really big sad to happen. And so it was kind of reflective of life, I guess, when you know something is happening to someone and you know that ultimately you're going to have to say goodbye. So it's definitely one I did enjoy. I will read again, just not very often because, you know, it'll be one that if I need to have a bit of a sad day and I want to read something a bit more emotional, that's what I will read. And yeah, it at least it did feature all of the characters in the first one. It wasn't like it suddenly brought in loads of new characters, which I really appreciated. But like I said, it definitely, the second book goes more from being about the books to being about people and family and relationships. And it wasn't necessarily a bad thing, it just wasn't exactly what I was hoping for. So yeah, 4 stars, and that was book whatever for the month. And then books I don't think I'm going to get finished. I'm not going to get The Beckoning Shadow finished this month. I'm still only 70 pages in, and it's been about a week now. So that will carry over to July. And Ace of Shades by Amanda Foody, about 150 pages into that. That's going to have to carry over. But everything else that I've started this month, I have managed to get done. And I have managed to get a heck of a lot of books done, more than I was expecting, which I'm very happy with. But anyway, I now have another audiobook I need to get done today, and I'm going to go do that. And you'll see me again very shortly with that update. So okay, I am wrapping up the month there because it's now the 2nd of July and I didn't finish that final book. I started it, I got halfway through so I could count it for the Amazing Readathon, but I haven't yet finished it, and I'm not sure, I'm a little bit bored because everything that's happened so far in this book was already told to us in the first book. So at the end of last month, I ended up with 10 books finished, 1 book that I'm soft DNFing or will carry over, and then The Beckoning Shadow that I said was going to carry over, I'm about to DNF. So more information on that in the next Read It or Reap installment, which should be out. I've got a little thingy here with a plan, with an idea of what I'm going to be doing next week. Yes, the 9th. So in a week you'll find out about that and why I'm DNFing. So yeah, that is June. 10 books I think is the most I've done so far in a month this year. But I've only got 7 written down. Bear with me. Yeah, so 10 books plus a graphic novel because I did Heartstopper Volume 5. That I think I've talked about, but if not, I gave it 5 stars because it was just super cute, super wholesome. And I loved that we got more from Nick's side of thing this time. I just really liked that. So it felt like we got more of a balance between the characters. But yeah, that wraps up June. I hope you've enjoyed this vlog or little recap of all the books. Let me know what your favourite read for the month of June was. I'm always interested to know. And do you have any exciting books planned for July? Please do go check out my July TBR to find out what I am reading this month or hoping to read. Because I also feel like this month's going to be quite a mood read, and I've also now got another read. I wasn't planning on doing any readathons in July, and then Charlotte, because of the Olympics, is doing Olympics-a-thon, which starts in July and goes into August, so I was like, crap. So there will be a TBR for that coming out as well in the next week or two. But in the meantime, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to go start my July reads, I guess. In the meantime, I hope you're all good. I hope you're staying safe, and I will see you on the next one.